Faith begins with believing who God is before it believes in Him for what He will do. It's living by the power of Christ instead of self, and that results in answered prayer. Before God does something for us, He will do something in us. You see, you're chosen to bear fruit, resulting in answered prayers, not Make-A-Wish petitions.
Thanks for joining us on Life Journeys, a podcast about thriving through the worst pain that life brings. With global initiatives threatening big changes to our way of life, we're going to need to activate Jesus' words about mountain-moving faith. Words That Work is the ongoing series on Life Journeys that is rooted in releasing revelational words of faith that will work every time and with everyone. It's about moving the mountains that keep us from the presence and goodness of God. It's about defining our life purpose and identity through encountering Him until we have the power to move the obstacles that are destroying our liberty and hope.
It's time to start realizing that we've been chosen and ordained by God to bear the image of Christ and experience answered prayer. It's time to stop making wishes and start praying in faith. It's time to realize that every prayer is asking for something impossible, or it just is merely making a wish. Prayer that comes from knowing God and allowing Him to establish the image of Christ Jesus in us is the only kind of prayer that works. It's the kind of prayer that moves mountains. And I want to talk about how to live in the place where we are unlocking impossible prayers. For that is one reason why we exist in this world as Christians. When we understand what it means to wrestle with God until we're living by faith instead of by the carnal man, we will begin to experience our calling to overcome, as Jacob did, and find the name of God stamped on our lives. The disciples one time said to Jesus, "Increase our faith." Well, the question for me is, what am I wanting more faith for? For me or for Him? You see, faith releases us to serve God, and it allows Him to meet our needs and enables us to live for Him as our master. Faith's great desire is to glorify God, and it seeks also the meeting of our needs in order to effectively accomplish that. Jesus said, "If you abide in me, and my words abide in you, you shall ask what you will, and it shall be done for you. Herein is my Father glorified, that you bear much fruit, and so shall you be my disciples." Later he said, "Continue in His word, for you have been ordained and chosen to bear fruit and have answered prayer." Continue until knowing His Spirit's presence has become your normal daily life experience. You will grow in fruit, and you will grow in answered prayer, for you have been chosen and ordained by God for this. He says, "I've chosen you and ordained you to release my life through you. You've not chosen me, but I have chosen you," Jesus said, "and ordained you that you should go and bring forth fruit, and that your fruit should remain." In other words, that you'd stay in a Christ-like life. "That whatsoever you shall ask of the Father in my name," He said, "that He may give it to you." Lasting fruit through abiding in Him leads to answered prayer. Faith is not so much believing that God will do something for us, but rather it is believing in who He is, by which we bear the fruit of living the image of Christ. It's living by the power of Christ instead of the power of self. It's living by His righteousness instead of ours, and a faith in Him instead of faith in oneself. This is the release or the manifestation of faith, and it results in answered prayer. Too many people are trying to believe God will do something for them, and their faith gets crippled because they've not known that faith is foremost given that God may do something in them. Far from being an obedience to earn favor with God, it's an obedience that comes from having received His favor by faith. And listen, God knows the difference. I won't wonder if I have enough faith because I'm willing to live what Jesus is imparting to me until the power of God's Son comes into us to change us and make us. It won't be very available to change the world around us. Now, at one time, Jesus said, with men, this is impossible. He was talking about the rich man giving up what he had to follow Jesus. And the disciples were struggling with that. And he said, hey, with men, this is impossible, but with God, all things are possible. In another place, he said, the things which are impossible with men are possible with God. With men, this is impossible. It's impossible for man to give away all his riches to follow Jesus. Trusting in money is a man's great and certain downfall. Only being with God, who does the impossible in the realm of men, makes this possible. Many of the impossibilities we face are nothing more than the impossibilities of our own hearts. Akin to this is the tremendous difficulty we have in seeking to glorify God instead of ourselves. Now that's nearly impossible. In fact, it is impossible without God. Our sense of personal value under the light that exposes pride lies close to all of our struggles with faith. You see, faith grows in the soil of a man whose heart has been humbled to reach up to God alone for his soul's peace and honor, his value, and his worth. Until our desire is more towards living in and for the glory of God than it is for our material, physical welfare, healing may very well tarry. If our priority is healing more than God's glory, we will one day cross a line into despair or defiance that will reveal our hypocrisy. The Bible says, and immediately Jesus stretched forth his hand and caught him, meaning Peter, and said to him, O you of little faith, wherefore did you doubt? This is their second time in a storm at sea. They already heard Jesus say to believe God for all your needs in Matthew 6. Later, they would have a faith teaching when they failed to cast out a demon. These men had also seen Jesus feed 4,000 and then 5,000 people with a few loaves and fish. So when Jesus asked, where is your faith? The disciples could have honestly said, it's in the storm. They believed in it more than anything else. That would have been the right answer. We've got faith that this storm is going to kill us. Whosoever shall say unto this mountain, be removed and be cast into the sea, and shall not doubt in his heart, but shall believe that those things that he says shall come to pass, he shall have whatsoever he says. Therefore I say unto you, what things soever you desire, when you pray, believe that you receive them, and you shall have them. How do you believe like this? Well, live for him. Live his life instead of your own. Accept his life as your own. How do you believe like this? Well, Jesus showed us how. He said, abide in him and his word. Stay there. Learn to seek him until you're living his word is as your truth, more than you're living your carnal senses as your only truth. In other words, now listen to this. Let his word influence you more than the world, the body, and the carnal desires and treasures of this life. By this you will think, speak, and act like he truly is your Lord and Master, your God. You see, faith is all about God being your God, your influencer. Faith is God influencing us more than the world does. So learn to believe the Word more than the world. Thereby you will overcome the world. That's why you're here. It's a process of putting God in you more than you in you. Can you literally move a mountain? Well, God in you can. And that's the power of His potential in you. In other words, there's always more than you already have. If you abide in me, and my words abide in you. That's a good place to start.
You can unlock the presence of God in your life. There are revelation principles that remove the mountains, keeping us from joy, hope, peace, and purpose when our world gets turned upside down. Look for these words that work with Pastor Hardika as he shares what has helped him when life got hard. And don't forget to check out his book, The Fortress and the Firebrand, available on Amazon and Barnes & Noble. Thanks for listening to Life Journeys. Find new episodes every Wednesday and Saturday. And if you're new to this series, it begins with the September 16th episode.
Faith begins with believing who God is before it believes in Him for what He will do. It's living by the power of Christ instead of self, and that results in answered prayer. Before God does something for us, He will do something in us. You see, you're chosen to bear fruit resulting in answered prayers, not make-a-wish petitions.